The icy wind bit at his skin as Royal Guard William Carter stood rigid, his eyes locked straight ahead, his face a mask of indifference. The majestic gates of Buckingham Palace towered behind him, holding centuries of history within their iron embrace. Yet today felt different. Something was off. The moment he placed the ceremonial bearskin hat on his head, he sensed it, an unfamiliar crinkle, a foreign presence buried within the lining. A scrap of paper, a letter. It shouldn't be there. It couldn't be there. Guards were trained to remain motionless, to show no reaction. But the weight of that hidden letter pressed against him like an unseen force, refusing to be ignored. And when he finally read the words, his world shifted in an instant. For 10 long years, William had stood sentinel outside the palace, a silent guardian enduring the mockery of tourists, the piercing cold, and the relentless demands of duty. To onlookers, he was a pillar of unwavering strength, but beneath the stoic exterior, he was a man lost in the void of his own regrets. His mother had always dreamed of seeing him in this uniform. "One day, my son will stand among royalty," she used to say, but she never got to witness it. A cruel illness stole her away before his first official watch. Stricken with grief, William buried himself in duty, closing himself off from the world. A decade of silence, a decade of solitude, a decade of questioning if this was all life had to offer. Until today. Until the letter. As soon as his shift ended, William retreated to a secluded corner of the barracks. With shaking hands, he removed his hat and fished out the fragile note. The edges were tattered, the ink slightly faded, as if it had waited years for this moment. The handwriting was unmistakable. His mother's. "My dearest William," it read. "If you're reading this, then my wish has come true. You are a Royal Guard, and I am so incredibly proud of you." His breath hitched, his vision blurred with tears he had long refused to shed. "But my son, life is not meant to be lived in silence. You were never meant to just stand still. You have a heart that cares, a mind that dreams, and a soul that longs for more. Promise me one thing. When the moment comes, when your heart whispers that it's time to move, listen." The letter ended with 5 simple yet earth-shattering words. Don't let life pass you. For 10 years he had convinced himself that standing still was his destiny. But his mother had always known the truth. And now it was time for him to see it too. The next morning, stationed at his post, William spotted a little girl in a wheelchair approaching the gates. She was delicate, bundled in layers despite the gentle warmth of the sun. Her mother leaned in, whispered something, and the girl let out a soft giggle. Then, in a moment of pure innocence, she did the unthinkable. She reached out and placed a tiny paper crown at his feet. A Royal Guard was expected to remain stone-faced, indifferent to the world around him. The old William would have, but his mother's words echoed in his mind. When the moment comes, when your heart whispers that it's time to move, listen. And so, in front of the watching crowds, the strict protocol, and the legacy of centuries, William broke the rules. He bent down. He carefully lifted the delicate paper crown and, just for a heartbeat, placed it atop his own head. The little girl's face glowed with unfiltered joy. The onlookers gasped. Cameras flashed. His fellow guards stiffened in uncertainty. But William didn't care. For the first time in a decade, he felt something he had long forgotten. Alive. The footage of that brief, extraordinary moment spread like wildfire. The Royal Guard who broke protocol for a child. But more importantly, it shattered the invisible chains around his own heart. Shortly after, William made a life-changing decision. He resigned from the Royal Guard, not in disgrace, but in triumph. He found a new calling, dedicating himself to charities supporting sick children, using his strength, discipline, and compassion to bring hope where it was needed most. One day, an unexpected message arrived. You didn't just make her smile that day. You gave her something to fight for. She's getting better. Thank you. Tears rolled down William's cheeks as he read those words. For a decade, he believed his purpose was to remain still. But in truth, his purpose was to move, and it had all begun with a hidden letter tucked inside his hat. Years later, as a visitor, William returned to Buckingham Palace. He watched the guards standing firm, their faces unreadable. And then he noticed something. A young guard, disciplined and unwavering, standing at attention. But there, just barely peeking from his hat's lining, a folded piece of paper. William smiled. Maybe, just maybe, history was repeating itself.